The quantum receiver aboard the Deep Space Research Station Horizon chirped to life at 300 hours Earth Standard Time. Dr. Maya Patel's eyes snapped open, her meditation interrupted by the sound she'd been waiting 3 years to hear. The array had detected something, not the usual background noise of dying stars or the electromagnetic whispers of distant galaxies, but a coherent signal. Eva analyzed the signal pattern. Maya commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The station's AI responded immediately, its neutral tone belying the significance of the moment. Signal contains regular mathematical sequences, detecting embedded data packets. This is artificial in origin, Dr. Patel. Maya's heart raced as she watched the data stream across her display. After decades of searching the cosmos for signs of intelligent life, humanity had finally received an answer. But as the translation algorithms began decoding the message, her excitement turned to ice in her veins. "Alert status," she commanded. "Wake Commander Chen and the senior staff. They need to see this now." Within minutes, the station's command center hummed with activity. Commander Sarah Chen stood at Maya's shoulder, her military bearing at odds with her hastily donned uniform, as they watched the message unfold. "It's a warning," Maya explained, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "The Dominion. That's what they call themselves. They're coming. But not as friends." The holographic display showed the path of the Dominion fleet, a massive armada of ships moving through the galaxy with methodical precision. Accompanying the warning were images of their previous conquests, entire civilizations reduced to vassals, their technologies and resources absorbed into the ever-expanding empire. "Their scouts will reach our system in 18 months, Commander Chen noted, her expression grim. "The main fleet follows 2 years after that. And according to this, they've never failed to conquer a civilization they've targeted." Admiral James Harrison, joining via quantum link from Earth Command, spoke up. "What do we know about their technological capabilities?" Maya gestured, expanding a section of the data. "They're centuries ahead of us in most areas. Energy weapons, faster than light travel, shield technology. Their smallest scout ships could probably handle our entire defense fleet." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had only recently ventured beyond their solar system, their first colonies barely established on Mars and Europa. Against an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds, their chances seemed microscopic. Then Lieutenant Carlos Rodriguez, the station's tactical officer, started laughing. All eyes turned to him, but he didn't stop. "Don't you see?" he asked, wiping tears from his eyes. "This is perfect. They've just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history." "Explain," Commander Chen ordered, but there was a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "They've shown us all their cards," Rodriguez said, pulling up the technical data from the warning message. "Look at how they fight. It's all brute force, overwhelming power, superior technology, the same tactics they've used for millennia. They expect every species to develop along the same technological path they did, to fight the same way they do." Maya felt a smile tugging at her lips as she caught on. "And we don't. We never have." Admiral Harrison agreed, leaning forward in his quantum projection. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to think differently, to find solutions no one else would consider." Commander Chen was already typing, her fingers flying across the interface. "We need to implement Protocol 0 immediately. Total communications blackout except for quantum encrypted channels. Every ship, every colony goes dark. They'll still detect our radio signals, our space activity," Maya pointed out. "Exactly," Rodriguez grinned. "Let them see exactly what we want them to see. A primitive species just taking its first steps into space. Meanwhile, Harrison finished, we prepare a welcome they'll never forget. Dr. Patel, I want you and your team analyzing every bit of technical data in that warning message. Commander Chen, You'll coordinate with Earth defense to begin what may be the greatest misdirection in human history." The quantum projection flickered as Harrison stood. The Dominion expects to find another easy conquest, another civilization that will fall to their superior technology. Instead, they're about to learn why humanity has survived every catastrophe our planet has thrown at us. We don't win by being stronger or more advanced. We win by being smarter, more creative, and far more unpredictable than anyone expects. As the command center erupted into activity, Maya turned back to her console, her mind already racing with possibilities. The Dominion had sent this warning thinking it would demoralize their next conquest. Instead, they'd given humanity something far more valuable: time to prepare and knowledge of what was coming. She glanced at the tactical display, where the countdown to the Scouts' arrival had begun. 18 months to revolutionize human technology, to build defenses no one would expect, to prepare a surprise for an empire that had never known defeat. Maya smiled as she began her analysis. The Dominion was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the biggest guns. It's the one who knows how to turn your own strength against you. 16 months after the warning, Dr. Maya Patel stood in the massive underground facility beneath the Atacama Desert, watching as engineers assembled what appeared to be the most primitive warship ever built by human hands. Its hull was a patchwork of visible welding seams and exposed struts, looking more like something from the early days of spaceflight than humanity's latest defensive weapon. That was exactly the point. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Lieutenant Rodriguez asked, joining her at the observation window. He'd been promoted to head of tactical innovation after his insights during the initial warning. The Dominion's going to take one look at this and think we're centuries behind them. Maya nodded, checking the readings on her tablet. The outer hull is perfect, looks completely primitive, but contains the quantum metamaterial mesh. They'll scan it and see exactly what we want them to see: basic metal alloys, chemical propulsion, and radio communications. What they wouldn't see was the truth. Beneath that carefully crafted exterior lay technology that would have seemed like magic even to most humans a year ago. The quantum metamaterial mesh could bend scanning beams around the ship, showing false images of its interior. The primitive chemical engines contained micro-singularity drives that could match any Dominion vessel's speed. And the simple radio antennas concealed quantum communication arrays that were completely undetectable to conventional sensors. "How many ships are ready?" Maya asked, watching as robotic assemblers continued their work below. "Ghost fleets at 60% strength," Carlos replied. "We've got similar facilities under the Gobi, the Sahara, and the Antarctic ice sheet, plus the orbital shipyards disguised as debris fields, all building ships that look like they barely work, but could outfight anything the Dominions ever encountered." Maya's tablet chimed with an incoming quantum message. Commander Chen's face appeared, her expression tight with excitement. "They've taken the bait. Dominion scout ships just entered the Kuiper Belt. They're seeing exactly what we wanted them to see." The past 16 months had been a carefully choreographed dance of deception. While humanity built their true fleet in secret, they'd maintained a visible presence of outdated technology. Old-style rockets launched satellites using chemical propulsion. Space stations were constructed using obvious mechanical means. Radio waves carried civilian communications, filled with carefully crafted, secret military discussions about primitive weapons development. "What about Project Mirror?" Maya asked, referring to the network of quantum-linked satellites that could create false sensor readings across the entire solar system. "Online and undetected," Sarah confirmed. "The Scouts are watching our failed attempts to build basic plasma weapons. Meanwhile, the targeting systems are tracking their every move." "How's the new weapon platform?" Maya gestured to another section of the facility, where technicians were assembling what looked like simple railguns. "The quantum uncertainty cannons are ready. They fire ordinary metal slugs, but each round exists in a quantum superposition until impact. There's no way to track them, no way to shield against them." The Dominion's going to think we're shooting primitive kinetic weapons at them right up until the moment their shields fail. And the best part, Carlos added with a grin, they're powered by good old-fashioned chemical explosives. No energy signatures to detect. We're using quantum mechanics to turn their own advanced sensors against them. The facility's main display showed a real-time map of the solar system, with the Dominion scouts represented as red dots moving through the outer planets. They were following a standard search pattern, methodically scanning for signs of advanced technology, energy weapons, antimatter reactors, faster-than-light communications, all the things they expected a developing civilization to be working towards. Instead, they found what appeared to be a species still struggling with basic spaceflight. Their scans showed primitive ships with obvious design flaws, weapons that relied on simple kinetic impacts, and communications that traveled at the speed of light. Everything in their database told them this would be an easy conquest. Admiral Harrison's call the final briefing, Sarah announced. The Dominion's about to learn that looking primitive and being primitive are two very different things. As Maya followed Carlos to the quantum conference room, she reflected on how far humanity had come. The warning message had contained detailed technical data about Dominion technology, intended to showcase their superiority. Instead, it had given Earth scientists the blueprint for defeating them. Every advance the Dominion had made, every technology they relied on, had been turned into a weakness. Their powerful energy shields couldn't stop weapons that existed in quantum superposition. Their advanced sensors were worse than useless against ships that could project false images. Their faster-than-light communications were child's play to intercept once you understood the principles behind them. And their complete confidence in their technological superiority meant they'd never suspect what humanity had actually achieved. The quantum conference room hummed to life, projecting representatives from similar facilities around the world. Admiral Harrison's hologram appeared at the head of the table, his expression stern but confident. The Dominion scouts will reach Mars orbit in 48 hours, he announced. Everything we've done, every deception we've crafted, has led to this moment. They expect to find a primitive species ready for conquest. Instead, they're about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology, it's our creativity. Maya looked around the room, seeing the same determined expression on every face. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of civilizations by overwhelming them with superior technology. But they'd never encountered a species that had turned their own assumptions into a weapon. They were about to learn that sometimes, the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the most advanced technology. It's the one who finds new ways to use simple things. The Dominion scout ship Eternal Vigilance sliced through space near Mars orbit, its crystalline hull refracting the distant sunlight. Commander Vex stood on his command deck, multiple eyes scanning the sensor readings with barely concealed disdain. The primitive human vessels detected in the area were hardly worth noting. Crude metal constructions using chemical propulsion and basic kinetic weapons. Another developing species that hasn't even mastered plasma technology, he commented to his second-in-command. Their most advanced ships are barely capable of reaching their own moon. Shall we begin standard conquest protocols? His officer asked, mandibles clicking with anticipation. Vex was about to respond when his sensor officer suddenly straightened. Commander, energy spike detected, but that's impossible. Explain, Vex demanded, all four eyes focusing on the main display. For a moment, I detected advanced power signatures, but they vanished. Must be sensor ghosts from the primitive nuclear reactors these humans use. Vex wasn't so sure. In 3 centuries of scouting developing worlds, he'd never seen sensor ghosts quite like that. But before he could investigate further, space itself seemed to ripple around his ship. 3 vessels simply appeared around them, emerging from what looked like tears in reality. They were ugly, brutal-looking things, all sharp angles and exposed metal, exactly what you'd expect from a species at this development stage. Except they couldn't possibly be there. No primitive ship could achieve that kind of maneuver. Impossible, Vex whispered. No primitive ship could. His weapons officer never got to finish the sentence. The first human ship fired what looked like a simple kinetic round. The Eternal Vigilance's shields easily caught the projectile, only to have it phase through them as if they didn't exist. The round struck their sensor array with surgical precision, somehow bypassing all their advanced defensive systems. How? Vex demanded. Those are primitive kinetic weapons. His science officer's voice shook as she responded. The projectiles. They're quantum-locked. They exist in multiple states simultaneously. Our shields can't stop something that's both there and not there at the same time. Another shot struck their engines, somehow knowing exactly where to hit. The Eternal Vigilance's power began to fade. Send the alert, Vex ordered. The humans have somehow developed. Sir, his communications officer's voice cracked with panic. We can't transmit. Something's eating our signals. Outside the ship, space itself seemed to ripple as more human vessels appeared. Each looked as primitive as the first, yet each harbored impossible technology beneath their crude exterior. They moved with perfect coordination, herding the Dominion ship away from Mars, deeper into the solar system. Their ships, the science officer reported, voice filled with disbelief. They're generating localized quantum fields. They're not just invisible to our sensors, they're bending probability itself around them. Every shot they fire exists in a quantum superposition until the moment of impact. There's no way to predict where they'll hit, no way to stop them. Vex watched as his ship's systems failed one by one, disabled with terrifying precision by weapons that shouldn't exist. His tactical display showed more human ships emerging from quantum shadows, each one a masterpiece of deception. Primitive on the outside, impossible on the inside. A new signal cut through their failing communication system, a human voice speaking perfect Dominion standard. Commander Vex of the Eternal Vigilance, this is Admiral James Harrison of the Earth Defense Force. Your ship has been disabled. Your quantum communications have been neutralized. You have two options: surrender and live, or attempt to resist and be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to decide. Vex's secondary hearts beat rapidly as he considered their situation. The humans had somehow developed technology that made no sense. They'd skipped dozens of normal development stages, creating weapons and defenses that worked on principles the Dominion had never considered, and they'd hidden it all behind a facade of primitive technology. Commander, Maya Patel's voice joined the channel. I'm fascinated by your crystalline hull technology. The way it refracts scanning beams is quite clever. We based our quantum metamaterial mesh on similar principles, though we took it in a rather different direction. The science officer gasped. The sensor ghosts. They weren't ghosts at all. Every scan we've taken, everything we've seen, has been exactly what we wanted you to see, Harrison confirmed. Your empire has conquered hundreds of worlds, Commander Vex, but you've never encountered anything like humanity. We don't follow predictable paths of technological development. We don't play by anyone else's rules. From his command deck, Vex could now see the true extent of the human fleet emerging from their quantum shadows. What had seemed like a primitive species barely capable of reaching Mars had somehow created ships that could dance through quantum probability itself. We surrender, he transmitted. The response was immediate. Wise choice, Commander. Prepare for boarding. And don't worry, we'll treat your crew with all the respect due to those who've helped us test our defenses. As the human ships moved in, Vex finally understood. The Dominion had encountered hundreds of species, conquered countless civilizations, but they'd never met anything like humanity, a species that had turned deception into an art form, that had developed technology specifically designed to counter Dominion capabilities, that had somehow known they were coming and prepared accordingly. The boarding party that entered his ship minutes later was just as surprising as everything else. The humans wore what looked like primitive pressure suits, but Vex's sensors detected energy fields and quantum stabilizers far beyond anything the Dominion possessed. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in humanity's most secure military facility, Commander Vex of the Dominion scout ship, Eternal Vigilance, watched in stunned silence as Dr. Maya Patel demonstrated exactly how thoroughly humans had analyzed and countered his civilization's technology. "Your quantum communication systems are impressive," Maya explained, manipulating a holographic display that showed the crystalline structure of Dominion tech. "But they're based on entangled particles in a fixed quantum state. We simply created a system that exists in all quantum states simultaneously. Your signals can't penetrate it because they can't find a stable state to lock onto." Admiral Harrison stood at the back of the room, watching the alien commander's reactions. "Your empire has spent millennia perfecting your technology, making it more powerful, more efficient. But you never stopped to consider that someone might come along and think about it completely differently." Vex's translator implant converted his clicking response. "You knew we were coming. The warning beacon we left gave us exactly what we needed," Maya finished. "Technical specifications, tactical doctrine, strategic patterns, everything we needed to develop countermeasures you'd never expect. While your scouts watched us launching chemical rockets and broadcasting radio waves, we were building an entire fleet designed specifically to defeat your technology." The display shifted to show the solar system, where dozens of seemingly primitive human ships were now emerging from their quantum shadows. Each one looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts, but contained technology that made Dominion sensors meaningless. "The main fleet will still come," Vex warned. "They'll adapt to your tactics." Harrison smiled. "We're counting on it. Tell me, Commander, what happens when an empire that's never known defeat encounters a species that refuses to fight the way they expect?" Before Vex could respond, alarms blared through the facility. Lieutenant Rodriguez burst into the room, his usual grin replaced by an expression of fierce excitement. "They're coming," he announced. "The main Dominion fleet just appeared at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Thousands of ships, just like we expected." Maya's hands flew across her console, bringing up new tactical displays. "They're moving faster than we predicted. They must have received some kind of automated signal from the scout ships." "Good," Harrison said. "The faster they come, the less time they have to think. Are the quantum nets in position?" "Ready and waiting," Rodriguez confirmed. "The moment they cross Jupiter's orbit, Operation Labyrinth begins." Maya turned to Vex, whose multiple eyes were fixed on the tactical display. "Your fleet is about to experience something unique, Commander. You see, we studied how the Dominion fights. You rely on overwhelming force, superior technology, and the assumption that less advanced species will try to match your capabilities directly. Instead," Harrison continued, "we looked at your technology and asked ourselves a simple question. How can we use this against them? Your powerful energy shields. We developed weapons that ignore them completely. Your advanced sensors. We created ships that show them exactly what we want them to see. Your faster-than-light communications. We turned them into traps." The display showed the Dominion fleet's approach, thousands of crystalline ships moving with the confidence of an empire that had never known defeat. But scattered throughout their formation, invisible to their sensors, waited humanity's true fleet. Not the primitive vessels they expected, but ships that could bend probability itself. "Your empire has conquered hundreds of worlds," Maya said softly. "But you've never faced a species that turned your own assumptions into a weapon. You expected to find simple radio waves and chemical rockets. Instead, you found humanity at its most dangerous, prepared, united, and fighting on our own terms." In orbit around Jupiter, automated facilities that appeared to be nothing more than debris began powering up their quantum probability drives. The space between the gas giant and Mars shimmered with invisible energy as humanity's most ambitious defensive system came online. "Operation Labyrinth," Rodriguez explained to Vex. "We're not just bending light or sensor readings anymore. We're bending space itself. Your fleet is about to enter a maze where the laws of physics themselves become negotiable." New alarms sounded as the Dominion fleet crossed the designated threshold. On the tactical display, space itself seemed to fracture into 1,000 overlapping possibilities. "And so it begins," Harrison said quietly. "The greatest empire in known space is about to learn why humanity has survived every catastrophe our planet has thrown at us. We don't win by being stronger or more advanced. We win by being smarter, more creative, and far more unpredictable than anyone expects." Maya watched as the first Dominion ships encountered the quantum maze humanity had prepared for them. In moments, their perfect formation began to break apart as space itself seemed to twist around them. "They're trying to compensate," Rodriguez reported, "adjusting their shields, modifying their sensor frequencies, but they can't account for something that exists in all possible states at once." Through it all, Vex watched in silence as humanity unveiled the full extent of their preparations. His civilization had spent millennia perfecting their technology, becoming the most powerful force in known space. But they'd never encountered a species that had looked at their perfect technology and found ways to turn it against them. The first shots would be fired soon, quantum-locked projectiles meeting crystalline hulls in a battle that would rewrite the rules of warfare. But the real victory had already been achieved the moment humanity decided to fight not with brute force or superior technology, but with creativity and deception that defied all expectations. The Dominion flagship Crystal Throne emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, its massive crystalline hull gleaming in the distant sunlight. High Admiral Nexus stood on his command deck, all 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical displays showing the human system before him. The scout ship's last transmissions had been troubling, impossible tales of primitive vessels wielding incomprehensible technology. But the High Admiral had conquered 300 worlds. No primitive species had ever stood against the full might of a Dominion battle fleet. "Launch the first wave," he commanded. Standard Conquest formation. The crystal ships moved forward with practiced precision, their formation honed by millennia of successful conquests. They expected to find a primitive civilization cowering before their advanced technology. Instead, they found empty space. "High Admiral," his sensor officer called out, mandibles clicking in confusion. "We're detecting thousands of human vessels, but the readings make no sense. They appear to be using chemical propulsion and primitive armor, yet they're generating energy signatures that shouldn't be possible." "Impossible," Nexus began, but space itself seemed to twist around his fleet. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation suddenly found themselves facing different directions, their carefully planned attacks disrupted by spatial distortions that defied physics itself. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Quantum Shade, Maya Patel watched as Operation Labyrinth reached its full potential. The quantum probability maze they'd created was working perfectly, turning the Dominion's own perfect formation against them. "They're trying to compensate," Rodriguez reported from Tactical, rerouting power to their shields, attempting to burn through the distortions with raw energy. Admiral Harrison nodded. "Just as we predicted. They're responding to an unprecedented situation by doing what they've always done, applying more power, more force. They still don't understand what they're really fighting against." Maya's hands flew across her console, adjusting the quantum fields. "Their shields are at maximum power. They're burning through enough energy to power Earth for a year, trying to force their way through our probability maze with brute force. Time to show them why that's a mistake," Harrison ordered. "Execute Phase 2. Across the solar system, humanity's seemingly primitive fleet began to move. Their ugly, patchworked hulls concealed technology that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Every shot they fired, every maneuver they made, operated on principles the Dominion had never considered. On the Crystal Throne, High Admiral Nexus watched in growing horror as his perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Ships that should have been unstoppable were being disabled by weapons that simply ignored their shields. Sensor readings showed human vessels appearing and disappearing, existing in multiple places at once. "How?" he demanded. They were primitive. Their technology was barely beyond chemical rockets. The answer came in the form of a transmission, broadcast on frequencies the Dominion thought were undetectable. Maya's voice filled the command deck of every crystal ship. Your Empire's greatest weakness, High Admiral, is your certainty. You've spent so long being the most advanced civilization that you forgot something crucial. Sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the sharpest claws, but the one who learns to hunt in ways you never expected. The human fleet struck from all directions at once, their quantum-locked weapons passing through Dominion shields as if they didn't exist. Ships that appeared to be cobbled together from scrap metal demonstrated maneuvers that should have been impossible, their primitive-looking hulls concealing technology that turned the laws of physics themselves into weapons. Your warning beacon, Harrison's voice joined the transmission, gave us everything we needed. While you watched us launching chemical rockets and broadcasting radio waves, we were building an entire fleet designed specifically to counter your technology. Every advantage you thought you had became a weakness we could exploit. The Crystal Throne shuddered as another volley of quantum-locked projectiles struck home. Nexus watched in disbelief as his supposedly invincible flagship systems began to fail. You could have come in peace, Maya continued. You could have shared your knowledge, helped us grow. Instead, you came as conquerors, expecting to find another primitive species to absorb into your empire. What you found instead was humanity at its most innovative, united against a common threat, and thinking in ways your empire never imagined possible. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the mighty Dominion fleet hung powerless in space, their perfect technology rendered useless by humans who had refused to fight the way they were expected to. In the Antarctic Command Center, Commander Vex watched the tactical displays with his former enemies. You knew, he said quietly. You knew they would respond exactly as they always had, trying to overwhelm you with superior technology. We knew, Maya confirmed, because that's what empires always do. They become so convinced of their superiority that they forget how they achieved it in the first place. Through innovation, through thinking differently, through finding new ways to solve problems. Admiral Harrison stood at the main display, watching as human ships began securing the disabled Dominion vessels. Your empire has ruled the stars for millennia, Commander Vex. But today marks the beginning of something new. A recognition that true advancement doesn't come from perfecting old technologies, but from finding entirely new ways to approach problems. As humanity's quantum fleet emerged fully from their probability shadows, their true nature finally visible, the galaxy witnessed the dawn of a new era. The Dominion Empire, which had never known defeat, had finally encountered a species that refused to play by their rules. In doing so, they had learned a lesson that would reshape the cosmos. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the most advanced technology. It's the one who finds new ways to use simple things in ways you never imagined possible.